Senator Keough.
To debate the bill.
You have the floor, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senators. Thank you for this opportunity to address this bill. And I'll try not to repeat some of the things that have been said, but in my notes there's a chance that I will, and I apologize in advance for that. You know, last year when we worked on the budget process and the shortfalls that we had, we did something that I had never participated in my time here, and with the leadership, with the support of our leadership and the support of the good chairman of the Finance Committee, we brought all the stakeholders to the table to talk about how to fund K-12 education in a way that put the students first and focused on what was best for the students in the classroom. And those were many, many hours, and some here on this floor participated in that discussion. Many, many hours of discussion, debate, times when I thought we were not going to stay at the table and come up with something, but ultimately we did. We came up with a K-12 budget that all the stakeholders could live with. It wasn't necessarily that they liked it, but they could live with it. And most important and germane to this debate is they were a part of the discussion. One of my concerns with this bill, Senate Bill 1108, is the stakeholders were not a part of this discussion up front. Now, it's been presented to us it's been presented to me, and it is out in the media and other places, that there is school board support for this, and there's administrators' support for this, and that the only folks that are against this are the Idaho Education Association and the teachers. And I would ask us to consider these questions and answers. Is there support for this bill? Yes. Is there opposition? Yes. And it is on both sides, from Idahoans across the board. School board members and school administrators in my district have contacted me and said, please do not allow Senate Bill 1108 to go forward today. We think there's things in it that are good, that we can live with, but there are so many other things that will upset the current situation we have in our schools. It is difficult enough with the financial considerations that we are facing to turn upside down teacher contract law at this time, at this point, without adequate deliberation and involvement will further undermine our efforts to truly put students first. We've received copies of other options that have been presented for us in this situation. Superintendents in Region 1 submitted information to us about how to get through this year. Superintendents from Region 5 echoed that and added some suggestions. Those messages again came with, let's wait, let's sit on this. Let's talk about it some more before we move through it. I'd like to call your attention to the fiscal note of this bill. And I would suggest to you that there's part of it missing. I asked earlier about continuing contracts, and I appreciate the response from the good senator from 4, but I was also appreciative of the question from the good senator from 19. If you have a contract, oh, I don't know, say you're a farmer or a rancher or a sheep herder, if you've got an existing contract with a definition of terms between you and the other person, and the third person comes in and rips that contract up or turns it upside down, and even if that's for the benefit of all in the future, are the two parties to that contract likely to stand still for that interruption of that contractual arrangement? chances are that at least one in that contractual arrangement is not going to stand still for that. And they are going to hire the best attorney they can find, and they're going to go to court. Now, I'm not an attorney, and I don't profess to be as smart as attorneys are. I certainly am not. But I believe that we are placing school districts in a very difficult position because this will get sued. There will be lawsuits. And the fiscal note does not reflect the cost of those lawsuits on the school district, who had no involvement with the changing of that contract, and the state, who will be party to that lawsuit. And so the fiscal note is inaccurate and truly doesn't reflect what the realities will be. There are other places in the bill, and I think that they've been covered, but I will just check quickly. I think reduction in force, certainly flexibility is needed. I would suggest that if we talk with our school districts, we have heard from our school districts that they have instituted reductions in force. They have laid off teachers and support staff. They used the flexibility we gave them last year, which is now being struck in this bill, to do the best they can under the circumstances. Seniority appears to work for us in this body. It should definitely be a factor in other places as well. And those things ought to be determined at the local level. But again, to undo a continuing contract, we will see the ramifications of that, unfortunately. That principles, section, page 15 on lines 22, principles to determine new staffing. I'm challenged by that. There are great principals and great teachers in this state. There's also, just by human nature, conflicts between principals and teachers. And this is very problematic new section that we're adding. Section 11, new section 11 on page 15, line 43, liability insurance. The provisions within this section seem to be, now I understand, I think, what's going on here. The desire to make sure that employees understand what options they may have for liability insurance, which is a noble goal, and certainly worthy. However, the bureaucracy of the process, if you go to page 16, lines 27 through the rest of the page, the annual reporting processes, the paperwork that's required for each teacher, we're mandating yet another set of instructions on bookkeeping that just seems kind of outrageous in the year where we're trying to make things easier for folks. We've talked about the 99% protection and what that allows, especially in places where you have migrant populations that move in and move out, and you don't know when they're possibly when they're going to be there and what your average daily attendance is going to be. That 99% protection allows some flexibility as it's determined what exactly your student count is going to be. That also would apply to rural areas of our state where the unemployment has been so high in the double digits, over 20% in some cases, where families may make a decision rather quickly and around the start of the school year as to whether or not they can afford to stay. If they've lost their job, if their unemployment benefits have run out, they might not be able to afford to stay in a district. And where the student was there last year and they may be there in September, there's contractual arrangements with or without this bill that would diminish that student count, and that 99% of flooring was important. Even so, that particular piece, I've heard from my districts, let's talk about it. Bring us to a table so we can come up with suggestions, because we understand that especially in this tight economic time, it diminishes money for other districts. The new section on page 20 under existing agreements, I find the phraseology in that paragraph very interesting, and in some cases actually kind of offensive personally. There are pieces of this legislation that I like, and I think that we could do a better job. Good senators, I appreciate your patience with my debate this afternoon, and I would ask you seriously to consider setting Senate Bill 1108 aside for this year. Bring people to the table that have a stake into it. Give the citizens of Idaho an opportunity to really, truly put students first. Thank you, Mr. President.